The James Show Podcast.
I know. I'm excited to hear from you, too. The top story of the day. It might seem weird for WBAP. It might seem weird for the demographics that listen to WBAP. But I got to think it's the Diddy story. I haven't talked about it a whole lot because I'm not one of those shows. This isn't a Nancy Grace show. I'm not Law and Order. And I don't have a whole lot to add to stories like this, really, usually until the trial is done. And now that it's done, I think it's appropriate to talk about because the Diddy trial, it comes in a wider context, sort of in the tail end of the Me Too movement. One thing I think most people liked about the Me Too movement when it started, maybe not where it ended up, but I think we all kind of like the idea that there's a bunch of evil people who've been getting away with abusing women and or children and been insulated by their wealth, their power, their privilege, their prestige, whatever it is. And some of these people were actually going to get justice. And it's not necessarily an envy position like, well, you know, if the average person did that, they'd get in trouble. No, you just want them to get, you want them all to get in trouble. You want them all to be equally discovered, ruined, and punished accordingly. The concern about the Me Too movement is there were a lot of people who were getting wrapped up in this fury where the general public was bloodthirsty and wanting scalps. It's almost turned into a Salem witch trial where just the slightest of grievances with the slightest of evidence got someone burned at the stake, metaphorically speaking. Of course, metaphorically speaking. But there's a really gray area here in the Me Too movement and the concerns that we all share and what the Diddy story presented to us. Now, the Diddy story was worse than I thought. I thought, hey, of course, he's a rapper. He's been rich and famous since he was a teenager or shortly thereafter. And of course, he has access to this whole party lifestyle and crew and celebrities and women that I'll never get. And that's fine. You know, there's people are always going to go to better parties than I go to. That's whatever. We're all used to that, right? And then we saw the tape where he beat Cassie in the hallway and drug her by her hair back to the hotel room. We're like, okay, well, this is a guy that goes too far. He's not just a fun-loving guy who has a lot of parties, you know. Think of something like Matthew McConaughey, who's he's just a fun guy. Sometimes he's naked playing the bongos, but it's all harmless. No, we're past that. It's past harmless. So we know, ethically speaking, he's not a good guy. He beats women. That's pretty reprehensible, no matter the excuse. But does that make it illegal? No. Being a terrible human being is not illegal. However, when I was telling you the charges that the jury was considering yesterday, weren't you kind of surprised? I was kind of surprised. Assault and battery's not in there. Beating Cassie's not in there. We have video of him committing a crime on tape. That's not part of the discussion. And so now I feel like I'm missing a step. Are we just trying to throw this guy in jail because he's nasty? Are we just trying to make a whole lot of headlines so some prosecutor can elevate their status and clout? And don't discount that. Did you watch the Martha Stewart show on Netflix, the one that covered her whole life? Because the part where she got in trouble for the insider trading and she went to jail, do you remember who the prosecutor was in that case? It was one guy you've heard of before, for sure, James Comey. That's right, James Comey. The guy who started the Russiagate case, the guy who exonerated Hillary Clinton in the email investigation, where he came out in a press conference, admitted she had committed like 300-something felonies, and then explained why they declined to press charges or to recommend pressing charges. That guy. So it works. It did elevate his career. He went from being someone you never heard of to someone, when I mention his name, you already know. Oh, yeah, that big idiot. So this Diddy trial, I'm torn on this one. Beating women, bad. This whole coercive, thing that he did with the convincing women to do things that they weren't exactly comfortable with. It's kind of creepy and gross. But is it illegal? Now, buying the prostitutes, illegal. Libertarian James isn't really incensed too much by that, but can admit, that is illegal. And those are the only charges that stuck on him yesterday. No pun intended. But it went way too far. Like I was trying to be not sympathetic, but empathetic. I've never been in that situation. Hey, 3 girls at the same time. This will be great. No, my life is cool, but it's not that cool. But then it got into the other bodily fluids, and then it got into the male prostitutes. And I don't know if women understands how that changes everything for a guy. Because guys, we're a little more shallow than women. I can explain it. If you were going to a party, if, it's Saturday night and you're hanging out with a bunch of dudes and, it's like a work-related, you're at a convention or something, and people are like, we're going to go to a party. Now, there might be some prostitutes there, some working girls. You'd be like, ooh, that's kind of sketchy. I might not go. I don't know. Maybe I'll just go and watch my step because so-and-so is going to be there, and this is a good chance to sort of network. But if you and your guys are hanging out and you get invited to a party and you find out male prostitutes are going to be there, that becomes a hard pass, actually. So he went way beyond what I think most of us thought was cool. And I actually kind of am happy with the agreement that being gross, being a total freak, isn't illegal in this country. It's a free country. You can go do disgusting things with consenting adults. And he's going to get some light and transient charges here. But now that, I know he's going to get a slap on the wrist. What was all this for? What was with the raids? What was with getting the toys and the 6,000 bottles of baby oil or whatever's going on? What was with watching all the videos and the tapes and getting all the salacious details and all the court sketches with some chalk on a grocery bag? What was all this for? Just to run him through the muck to get him on a couple of weak little prostitution charges? Like, is that even felonies? And I don't really have a good answer for that. I'm kind of asking you, what was all that about? This is all we got him for? Something that we all assume that this Hollywood crowd, this entertainment crowd does every day. But the stuff I heard in the trial, while it was pretty grotesque and immoral, and I don't know, I thought it was going to be cool. I thought it was going to be sexy. I thought it was going to be like an adult movie. I went way, way past that to something that I didn't think was cool and sexy anymore. But that doesn't make the guy illegal. And so I'm really wondering, what was all this performative stuff for? Anyway, they didn't get him for beating up Cassie, something we all saw on video. So I don't know. I'm surprised by this verdict. I figure if we're going to do all this hullabaloo, the feds know what they're doing and they're going to get him, take down a criminal enterprise. They just took down a guy who partied way harder than he should have. Gross, but not illegal. 800-288-9227. This is Steve in Weatherford. You're on WBAP, Steve.
Hey, sir. I guess 3 points come to mind for me right quick. Martha Stewart went to jail for insider trading, and Nancy Pelosi walked like a princess. Hunter Biden has done things 100 times worse than Diddy, and he walked. So the phrase that nobody is above the law, next time we hear that, we can immediately say, well, that's crap. In this country.
Steve, that's the perfect comparison is to Hunter Biden. We've seen him do things far worse than Diddy, mistreating prostitutes worse than Diddy did. The gun charges, the drugs, I don't remember anywhere in the trial where Diddy was smoking crack or, I don't know. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, Biden, he didn't register as a foreign agent and brought in millions of dollars, fleecing countries around the world. So what Hunter did was Diddy plus much, much more. And then the third element would be this. I have it on good authority, personal testimony to me, that occasionally in Dallas, a whole hotel is taken over for a group called The Lifestyle. They're swingers, and they party like animals all weekend long in a hotel in Dallas. And this is reality.
Oh, my God, yeah. That's terrible. Where? See what I did there?
I don't know where, but I know they do it. And so, yeah, you see the government gets overzealous and comes down on people. And if your dad's not the president, you can get in trouble and spend a lot of money.
What, man, you are touching all my buttons here because I feel a lot of the same way you do. But my question to that scenario, Steve, is if he was being protected by the elites, you know how they like to protect their own for all these years, what did he do to get punished by the elites where they stopped protecting him?
He ticked somebody off in the government, and that somebody came after him with the full weight of the federal government.
Yes.
That's how it usually goes down, unless you're a nut job with a knife in Idaho.
Well, because that's the same questions we asked about Jeffrey Epstein. If he's getting away with it for 40 years or however long he's been having his little underage rape island, what did he do now that he lost that protection, that the veil of protection was lifted? I don't have an answer for that, but I feel like something similar happened here with the Diddy situation.
He threatened somebody very powerful, and that very powerful person made sure he got some poison pudding for dinner one night in a jail cell.
Man, good conversation. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. If you have anything you want to add to the Diddy story, 800-288-9227. Yeah, but Steve did a pretty good job getting out the rest of my uncertainties about this case, because he does seem to be one of these privileged elite guys that was protected for years, and now all of a sudden he's not protected. Right after Epstein's not protected anymore, right after Harvey Weinstein's not protected anymore. And so that's sort of the suspicious part about, this wave we're surfing from the Me Too movement is the timing of this. Awfully suspicious. Can anyone explain that for me? I don't think anyone really has the inside scoop on that, but you can try. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Now, the news of the day that actually affects you more is what the latest on the Big Beautiful Bill. The Big Beautiful Bill has gotten this new angle of attack that if we pass this, people are going to die. And it was just the same as the U.S. aid claim that was happening. What was that, last week or 2 weeks ago, where Bono was on Joe Rogan saying there's already been 300,000 people who've died because of the U.S. aid cuts. And you should know by now, that's a super red flag that someone's just trying to be sensational and scarebomb you. If you don't do what I want to politically agree with, then people are going to die. Oh, really? Here's your least favorite senator, Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts, making the same old tired, worn out complaint that if the Republicans get their bill passed, people are going to die. Does everyone recognize this as just the bottom of the barrel pandering, just the most dishonest, emotional, least academic, intellectual attack you can make on someone's political policy? Oh, if you do this, people will die.
Okay. So the Republicans keep working on this bill and it keeps changing. And it keeps getting worse. So the latest, based on what they've done, is that about 17 million people will lose their access to health care. And just so everybody understands about this, who we're talking about your cousin's baby that was born and ran up $1 million in medical debts before the little one even made it home the first time. We're talking about your neighbor who got hit by a bus and ended up in a wheelchair and needs a home health aide to be able to live in his home. And we're talking about your friend's grandma who outlived her savings and now counts on Medicaid to pay for her nursing home. So those are the folks we're talking about. And those are the folks who, under this Republican bill, are going to lose their health care.
Does anybody believe that? Because the wording on this is insidious. People are going to lose their health care. No, they're not. She's conflating the term health care with health care insurance or participation in a government-run socialized health care plan. But you're not going to lose your health care. It's not like if this bill passes, grandma's going to go to the doctor and he's going to be like, I refuse to serve you, madam. You have lost your health care. No. He might get health care. He might give her health care and actually hand her the bill instead of handing you, the taxpayer, the bill. All these other people might be on the hook for their own health care. Or they may be on the hook for health care from other services, from private voluntary donations or from other charitable sources, or maybe having to dip into their own funds, or maybe getting some help from their family, or maybe getting some help from their local church, or maybe getting some help from the March of Dimes or St. Jude or a charity hospital or something. But they are not losing their health care. This is a scaremongering tactic. Just like later in the show, there's nothing wrong with that prison that's in Florida. They're just going to call it a concentration camp. They have to use these scary, sensational arguments because merit, logic, and common sense is not on their side. I didn't pay for your lunch today, did I? Did you eat lunch? Did I pay for it? No. Did I take away your lunch? Did I take away your food? Or did you just have to pay for it your damn self? I've just scratched my head. How does anyone fall for this? How does anyone listen to Elizabeth Warren and go, lady, you're off your rocker? This is Julie in Saginaw. You're on WBAP.
Hey, I've got two things for you on the Diddy stuff. First off, I think that the government overcharged him for a reason. I say overcharged. Went for the racketeering because they knew that it would basically let him off, and if he got the lesser charges, then they got the lesser charges. And then second, I think it was Fox that just posted about the jury was pretty much split the night before, and the judge let them go home the night before, and they come back with a guilty verdict. Like, did somebody get to him, buy him off? What really happened?
It's all shady because even with the charges that did stick, they're so small that we would all question the amount of resources and effort and attention. Like how many other crimes went unpunished because we were chasing this dude around with all this? Because we have finite law enforcement resources. And for every man hour that was spent on this case, seemed like it was pretty well wasted. So was this just someone's vanity project? And if so, that's a bad look for the criminal justice system.
Yeah, I think that was the point, to do it so that he didn't really go to do any real time, If he does any, other than a slap on the wrist, so.
I know. I feel like I'm missing part of the story, Julie. Thank you very much for calling in. This is JW in Plano. You're on WBAP. Go.
Hey, so I was thinking about the big, beautiful bill, and I've just been talking about how just awful it is. And you don't even have to get down to the Medicaid cuts or whatever to figure out this is a bad bill. It's going to increase the debt by $3 trillion. And Rand Paul is the only person that makes sense in the whole room when he talks about this. He's been the only person that's been consistent about this. It costs $3 trillion, and that makes it a bad bill right there. And, if this country goes down, it's going to be because of the debt of this country. It's not going to be from enemies within or outside of our borders. It's going to be because of our debt, and we're never going to get it taken care of at this rate.
Well, here's keep going down that road because you sound like you're on the same team as me here, JW. And if we do get taken down because of our profligate spending and our debt, what's the number one driver of that debt?
The number one driver of the debt as it currently is right now?
Yeah. 70% of our federal budget spending is on social programs. Most of that's on Social Security, but you roll in Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, public housing, all that stuff that's done at the federal level. That's 70% of all of the spending that we do. You get rid of that. You get rid of the socialism that's embedded in our government, and we're not going to collapse anytime soon. But here's the ugly part. The biggest driver of those social programs, the two biggest ones, Social Security and Medicare. How on earth do we repeal that?
Well, here's the thing. You bring up a good point because you are right. Like over 2/3 of it is those safety net programs, but
it's wealth redistribution. It's taking money from one person and giving it to another one.
Well, yeah, but you can't unravel that. Really, it's hard because it's federally mandated law. Okay, that those mandated programs are to be fully funded. But I bet if you ask every American citizen, every tax-paying American citizen, would you rather just pay just a little bit more taxes right now, maybe just in the short term, to get control of this debt, and then down the road, let's give tax cuts to businesses and everybody or whatever. I bet you any reasonably and responsible person would be like, you know what, let me pay just a little bit more taxes right now, and let's get this debt under control. We don't need the tax cuts right now. I say, don't do the tax cuts. Don't take the revenue away. Let's pay the debt down. Deal with the social programs, later.
No. Let me tell you why I disagree with that, JW. Because the Tax Cut and Jobs Act passed at the very end of 2017. So if we let that expire, the tax rates will go back to where they were in 2017, and pretty much all the way back to the sort of Bill Clinton-ish. Wouldn't that be fair? The similar tax rate from the 90s up until about 10 years ago. The debt was going up. The debt was going up then. When we had higher tax rates, we still had the debt going up. We still had the deficit going up. We still had overspending. We had $1 trillion deficit in 2009 from the Obamacare porculus bill, and that's when tax rates were higher. I don't think we need just slightly higher taxes. It has to be spending cuts. Period. Point blank. End of story. We're already so far over our skis right now that I fear it's not. I fear it's not reversible.
Where are the spending cuts in this bill then?
There's not. It increases spending. In fact, the deficit goes up $270 billion next year.
Exactly. So if you leave the revenue in place, that's going to offset that. But the biggest thing that makes this thing upside down is taking away all the revenue. That's the big driver of this bill, and that's what Rand Paul is talking about.
Now, Rand,
he likes this thing.
Look, I think we're too far up on the Laffer curve where when we cut taxes from the Obama rate to what Trump did in 2017, revenue still went up. lower tax rates can result in more revenue because you get more economic growth. And are you familiar with the Laffer curve? You know, Art Laffer and his little model that shows increased tax rates don't necessarily bring in more revenue?
Yeah, well, they need to go back to the table and work on it because just the top overview price tag of this thing, it can't work.
Well, I like the conversation that you and I are having here versus what Elizabeth Warren was saying, like, well, you know, your neighbor that got hit by a bus, he's going to die.
Okay.
You know, there's
So the Republicans keep working on this bill, and it keeps changing, and it keeps getting worse. So the latest, based on what they've done, is that about 17 million people will lose their access to health care. And just so everybody understands about this, who we're talking about your cousin's baby that was born and ran up $1 million in medical debts before the little one even made it home the first time. We're talking about your neighbor who got hit by a bus.
such an extreme scenario. Like that's the norm on who gets money from you for Medicare and Medicaid. Yeah, your neighbor got hit by a bus, $1 million for a NICU baby. I got it. Great call, JW in Plano. Thomas Massey has come out and said that he has 10 fellow Republicans in the House that will vote against the reconciliation package here on the big beautiful bill, meaning if he's right, he could stop the big beautiful bill. Now you may say, well, didn't it already pass the House and the Senate? Well, yeah, but they passed two different versions. So they have what's called a conference committee where they come in and they put together sort of a mishmash of the two bills. And then they only need a simple 50% majority in both of the houses. You don't have to worry about a filibuster or anything happening in the Senate to pass. And, in the House, it's just assumed that if you had the 50% of the votes to pass it the first time, then whatever comes out of the conference committee usually sails right through. But there have been so many big changes where they took out things that you and I thought were important. And I guess there's been enough changes that Tom Massey's been able to slip off 10 House Republican members to vote no on the big, beautiful bill. Now, this is creating quite an interesting debate within the Team Red circus tent here, because let me read to you a tweet here from Carlos Tercios, who broke the news just within the hour. The guy, he's on the show on a somewhat regular basis from DallasExpress.com. But he says this is sabotage. He says Congressman Thomas Massey says he has 10 House Republican members vote no on the big, beautiful bill. Massey is blocking border security and President Trump's work. We are being sabotaged by rhinos. Now, hang on a second. A couple of pushback to that. Being sabotaged by rhinos. The position that he's in is it doesn't cut enough. It's not a conservative bill. It grows government. The reason he's voting against it is because it's liberal. It's pro-government. It's big government. It grows spending. It grows the size, power, and scope of government. That's the opposite of conservative principles. So he's not the rhino. The people who are voting for this are the rhinos. I'm interested in the border security complaint, too, because we all want border security. That's something that might appeal to fellow Team Red, people who would be willing to be sympathetic from Team Red, I should say. But don't we already have border security without this big bill? Didn't we already shut down the border? Didn't we already prove that all we had to do is enforce the existing laws as they're written on the books, and the border problem is already solved? See, that's the point Biden was trying to make last year. And during the election season, well, up until a week ago last year, where they were saying, well, we have this border bill to fix the border, but the Republicans voted against it, and Trump told them to because they didn't want them to get the border win and shut down the border. So I guess the Republicans really want an open border. Well, no, that's not the case. And that was proven by the fact that we had basically no illegals crossing the border last month. So here we have another interesting issue. Now, Carlos Tercios and I are on the same side. We both want what's best for this country, and generally speaking, can be affiliated with Team Red. So why do we disagree on this? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. If you support the big, beautiful bill, why? Why are you willing to support more debt, more deficits? $5 trillion raising of the debt ceiling. We don't need the border security part. The border security part's already done. We've already locked down the border. What is so good about this? I get it. Extending the tax cuts. For me, not enough. I would like to balance the budget. That is my ideal. That is my goal, right? And that's just a starting point. I would like to, reduce spending. I would like to reduce the size of government. So this isn't enough for me. And I don't know where this is going to go, but this is a super interesting wrinkle in the turn of events that's happening around the big, beautiful bill. Congressman Thomas Massey has announced that he has 10 House Republican members who will vote no on the big, beautiful bill. Who's more Republican? The people that want to grow government or the people that are wanting to cut government? Which one's really the rhino? 800-288-9227. I guess what I'm really asking, are you on Team Elon? Are you on Team Massey? Or are you on Team Trump? I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. This is Terry, Oklahoma City. You're on WBAP, Terry. What do you think?
Well, I kind of disagree with you on Massey and the people that are standing in the way of this thing.
Okay.
No, it doesn't really shrink anything. It doesn't stop the overspending they're doing. But the swamp is deep, and there's no way to do that in one shot. The problem with...
Why not?
Well, because you don't have enough support. I mean, Massey's great for standing on his principles.
Right. Well, dude, we don't have support for this.
But a no vote is a no vote, And if you don't pass the thing, a lot of good things don't get done. Mainly the tax cuts that are going to go back to their 2017 levels.
But Terry, you're saying these things like they're already a done deal. Why don't the conservatives put their foot down? Why don't they say we're not going to vote for anything that doesn't balance the budget?
Because 40 or 50% of the Republicans aren't conservatives. There's not enough support for it.
Okay, so what are they? Are you saying they're rhinos? The people that support this bill are rhinos?
I'm saying they're traditional Republicans, and the traditional Republicans have been just as bad on spending as the Democrats have. And they're not going to cut crap. They're not going to cut crap. They're going to feather their own nest like they always have. Hope that Trump's 4 years pass quickly, and business back to business as usual.
Okay, but that's not like really a faction in the Republican Party. That's 49 out of the 50 Republican senators that all voted for bigger government. So the Republican Party is not the party of limited government. Democrats are worse, don't get me wrong. But for those of us who want a smaller government, how the hell do we keep voting for this?
Well, I wonder how a lot of these guys keep getting reelected. But let's go back to Massey for a second.
Okay.
And all that. I appreciate him. I really do. I appreciate somebody who stands on principle. But politics is compromise. Politics is not principle. You stand on the principle, you get run over.
No. Let me tell you why I push back against that, too. Because if it was compromise where sometimes we win and sometimes they win and sometimes you get a little bit of what you want, but you don't get everything of what you want. Okay, if for every time that this has come up, in our entire lifetime, the compromise is, okay, well, let's grow government. Then there is no compromise. This isn't, the big government guys don't ever compromise. They always get bigger government. How come they never have to compromise? How come they never have to come meet me in the middle? And look, I want a balanced budget. I want budget cuts. Can we at least cut the deficit in half? That's a compromise. This is not a compromise. This is our principles getting run slap over again, and Republicans are cheering like this is some victory.
But there is a victory. There is a victory in this because you can go back and compartmentalize. I can't remember what exactly the term is for the president being able to cut things as he sees fit. But it's called compartmentalization or something like that. But
you're talking about rescissions or a line item veto or something?
Okay. He can do rescissions. That's the word I was looking for. But let me go back to your point on the border already being secured.
Yes.
The money's not for that. The money is to deport people. We need 10,000 more agents, and we need people on the street deporting people because you can't do it with the number we have now. We're only getting 1,500 a day tops.
Yeah. So
and it's gonna when they're coming in at 20,000 a day for 4 years, it's not going to be it's going to be 100 years before you get them out at 1,500 a day. So we have to have more people. We have to have more border enforcement of that nature of the ICE deportation team, not the border security. The military's doing a great job down there, and so as Texas DPS and all those guys. everybody who's working down there has got the border pretty much sealed. Now we have to get these guys out, and that takes money and more people.
Okay, but that's not what all this spending is. You know, like $175 billion of it is for a new Golden Dome. How about we balance our budget before we start new projects? Like, how do people act like that's a major national security threat? Does anyone else have a Golden Dome besides Israel? Is that why the Soviet Union fell? Because they didn't have a Golden Dome? Or did they fall because they spent so much more money than they took in? They had rampant inflation and their economy collapsed because of it. You know, that's what happens to Argentina like every 25 years. That's what happened in Venezuela in the 2010s.
If you don't stop printing the money, that's what'll happen.
All right. Well, hey, great discussion.
I'm all with you on reducing spending. I just don't think we can do it in this thing, and I think passing this bill is necessary.
See, it's not you, Terry. It's that for 23 years that I've been doing talk radio. Next month will be 23 years. People, almost everyone has said to me, I want a smaller government, but... And if all of those people would just stand on their damn principle and actually demand a smaller government, we'd get a smaller government. The only reason we don't is because they can grow government and people like you still vote for them.
Well, I'm not voting for my Oklahoma senators next time around. I'm hoping if we get some people that believe in smaller government who will run, and I'll vote for those guys.
Well, Terry, you're a great caller. I'm sorry I was taking out some of my frustration on you because you're just kind of the avatar for the people that I've been debating this with for 2 decades now. But this is the time to have the debate. This is really the only time it matters is when we're in a position to do something about it. Now we're in a position to do something about it, and we're going to grow government even bigger than what Joe Biden wanted.
The James Show Podcast.